What's up, nerds? Welcome back. As some of you may have heard, DC Comics right now is going through a push to revive their Milestone line, and part of that effort started with the whole Static Shock. Many of us grew up. I remember the cartoon very fondly when I was growing up. And we've all heard, I think, about that fiasco that's going on with that book. And I think that has kind of overshadowed some of the effort that's come from this actual milestone returns thing, because there is a better side to that, and we're going to talk about one of those things today, which is Icon and Rocket season 1. All right, so if you've never heard of these two particular characters, Icon is basically like a black Superman character. If that surprises you, because wait, there is a black Superman now. Yeah, this came first. He was first. Calvin Ellis and Val Zod came after Icon. So why did they make Black Superman? Because reasons. Because tokenization. And see, what we're getting here is a perfect reason why Icon should be a thing. Why Icon should be celebrated so much more than Calvin Ellis or Val Zod, the way that everybody's just like fangirling over them, even though they've never known about them. But now that Michael B. Jordan is going to be doing something with a black Superman, everybody's just fangirling for two characters they've never heard of. But let's talk about another character a lot of people haven't heard of. And anyway, we start out with kind of like Icon's basic origin story. If you've never heard it, he kind of has a very similar, he's basically Superman. He's an alien from another planet who came to this planet and was raised by people from our planet. But his is a little bit different, and we kind of get that approach here because we start out with this spaceship, right? And it's kind of giving us the rundown of what's going on. It says he was heading home when it happened. All the passengers were asleep, and we see all of these cryo chambers or whatever. And then it's telling us that one of the passengers actually had a weapon inside of their body, and that's how they were able to get the weapon inside the ship. And so at the perfect time when everybody was asleep, the weapon crawled out of the body and went and started planting bombs. It says it was a shape-shifting terrorist who wanted to kill everyone on the ship. He pooped out explosives, then put a timer in it. Who knows where that was hidden? So that was kind of funny. And then it says, but it wouldn't be that easy. There was someone who saw that terrorist for what he was. Someone willing to stand up and fight. And that's, of course, the alien that would go on to become Icon. And so as you can see here, he doesn't look anything like an Earthling or anything, and we kind of get some more information on that later. But anyway, he kind of fights off the terrorist or whatever, and then it says that it spat acid into his eyes, so that kind of blinded him just long enough for it to get away. And it says, and didn't have time for his eyes to grow back. Then it says that wasn't enough to stop him, but the terrorist escaped anyway. So we see where it's saying, basically because of the bomb's timer or whatever, he realized there's no time to try and save anybody but myself. So he did just that. He saved himself and got the hell out of there and shot himself toward the nearest planet, which happened to be, of course, Earth. And that's where we come to the planet, because as you can see, we have these two folks. They're a black couple. They are a slave couple because, as we will find out on the next page, this is set in Georgia in 1843. So very definitely a slave couple. And she's saying hey, is the North Star getting closer? And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, this is crazy. It is getting bigger. It's coming at us. And that's when they finally realize oh shit, something's actually flying at us. And then it hits into the field. So they're the first two to go out there, because if you know anything about the way that slavery was back then, basically the slaves' quarters were usually located right next to the fields for a reason. So anyway, he says hey, where are you going? And she's saying I need to see what it is. But he's like, no, you don't. That racket done woke up the whole crowd. So she's like, I just need to see it. And she's going out there to go see it anyway. So of course he goes with her because he's not going to let her go alone. And then it says in the internal monologue or whatever, Mary later told her son how the whole field smelled like boiled sugar. So apparently it was that kind of plantation. They were growing sugar cane. And then he's saying like, "What are you doing? That might burn you." Because she goes up to touch it, but then she says like, "No, it's not hot. It's actually cold or cool. Yeah, it's cool." So then it's saying the capsule was designed to respond to the touch of a high functioning being. The connection was immediate. So basically, what it does is it like scanned her DNA and then it operated off of the assumption that, well, species don't generally tend to just kill things that look like their babies. So that's what it did. It scanned her DNA and then it made him look like an Earth baby that would look like them, knowing, well, that's probably the best bet for it to not kill me because it's going to assume I'm not a threat, I'm one of its young. So he's saying, like, watch out, it's doing something because I guess they saw it like right at the tail end of it, like transforming. And then we go from there to where we see some of the like plantation owners are starting to come out and trying to see like what the hell's going on. So he's telling her, like, come on, we got to go. And she says, hold on, I'm not going to leave him. So she, like, grabs the baby and he's trying to figure out, like, where did it come from or whatever. Or they're looking, the plantation owners are looking at the spaceship, like, well, where did it come from? And, like, how are we going to get it out of here and shit? And then we see where they basically, like, took the baby and they started raising it. So we kind of go from there to the present day, where we get introduced to the other character who's on the title, who is in the title and on the cover is Rocket, which is that girl, Raquel. And so she's basically here with some, I don't really want to call them friends. She has this dude who's kind of like her boyfriend. I put that in quotes because he's not really a good one. And he kind of proves himself to be a piece of shit. So I'm going to put that in quotes. And then these guys are like his friends. So they're looking at this like big house or whatever, which, as you can guess, yes, it does belong to Icon. So they're looking at this house because they're about to go and break in. And this is basically like kind of the origin story for how these two met in the original like series or whatever. Like they broke into his house and everything, and that's how they met. So they're kind of doing that here, but they put a fresh spin on it, which is refreshing, and it's done in a tasteful ways. But let's kind of look at that. So they're kind of talking, and basically they want to break in there because apparently she's heard about there being a typewriter in there, and they're kind of talking about like they don't understand why she wants a typewriter. Like, there's probably a computer or at least a smartphone in there that you can use. And she's saying like, I don't want to be online. It works both ways. And they're like, well, do you know what she's talking about? They're talking to the dude that she's with. They're like, do you know what she's talking about? And he's like, I have no idea what the hell she's talking about. Or the dude in the passenger is like, I have no idea what she's talking about. So he's like, she's always stealing dumb stuff. Remember when she almost got caught taking that book from the drugstore? He's like, yeah, a book. That was stupid. I'd probably do the same thing. But anyway, if I was going to commit a crime, it'd probably be that, stealing a book. Anyway, the dude is like, yeah, what was that about, baby? You read it in a night. It didn't even last that long. So, hey, props to her. She read it in a night. Anyway, she's like, they can track you. They know where you are and they read what you write. As much dirt as you all do, that should be something you worry about. So they're just now realizing like, oh wait, if we steal someone's smartphone, they can like actually track us with that. So she's like, of course they can. Plus you snitch on yourself all the time. So that's where her boyfriend or whatever is telling them like, yo, what have I told you about that? And he's like, yo, like, now, the driver's telling like, yeah, now who's stupid? He's like, you didn't know either, and all this bullshit. So anyway, the dude tells her like, that's why you my girl. I'm smart enough to appreciate what you bring to the table. And she's like, really? He says, of course. Now I need you to get us in that house. Then I can get you what you want, okay? So classic manipulation. So of course she goes in there and then they're kind of like talking shit about her, saying like, yeah, these females are weak. No matter how smart they think they are, they're always dumb and bullshit like that. So the boyfriend is saying like, you got to know how to talk to him, Tion. So he's saying, yeah, but when you get in some, he's like, she's a good girl, Big Mike. I keep saying you can't rush it. I got plenty side hoes for that. So yet again, another common thing. Sometimes, not every guy is like that. It's not a common thing among all guys, but yeah, there are certainly guys like that. And you can usually tell which ones they are. But for whatever reason, that's the type of guy that women go for. So that ain't on us. It says it definitely used to be a nice house. Mansion, really. This whole block used to be nice. Now it's either worn down or torn down. No one even looks up to see it but me. Treasure's right here if you got eyes and hustle. So she looks back one more time and asks, like, "Are you sure no one's home?" And he tells her, like, "Yeah, for sure. Just go ahead and go for it." So she jumps the gate or whatever. I was going to say fence, but really it's made out of concrete, so it's really more like a wall. And then she goes in the house or whatever. They finally get inside. And then there's one thing I wasn't sure if this was a mistake from the letter or something, because basically it says Damon, and I was like, is that supposed to say Damon or is that like damn? I don't know what that was supposed to be, but maybe I just misunderstood. Anyway, so they're going into the house and they're looking around, and one thing they kind of, or one of them at least notices, is like, yo, all of these pictures seem to be of the same dude, and they're all just like freaking out because the place is like huge and shit. And so one of them is like, I'm just tripping on black folk having this much money back then, which I guess is fair because I mean the guy grew up during slavery, but I mean he's been alive for this long, but they don't know that, so I guess it's kind of understandable. I mean, especially seeing him like in the early 1900s having that much wealth, I can understand why maybe they wouldn't right offhand not know about him, especially since he doesn't seem to be like a historical figure or whatever. So, anyway, they finally encounter him. He runs up on them. Well, I say runs up on them, but he just kind of like walks up on them while they're like looking through his house, of course. So her boyfriend or whatever pulls out a gun on him, and she's like telling him like, "Yo, what are you doing? Why do you have a gun?" And he's saying like it's for protection. I'm protecting us. And then she's saying like, "You told me no guns ever." So he's like, Augustus tells him like, "Son, put the gun down." And he's like, "Don't tell me what to do or whatever. I ain't your son." And he's like, "No, breaking is not a big deal, but attempted murder is. You're just going to hurt yourself and your friends." So she keeps trying to like talk him down or whatever, but he keeps trying to play the tough guy. And so finally he ends up just like shooting at him. And they think that he's done something because like he falls down or whatever. So he falls down and they're like, "Yo," he's saying, "I didn't mean to. I mean, he was talking too much. He disrespected me." So they're saying like, we need to get out of here and shit. But then they're saying like, "Yo, what about the body though? We don't know who heard that shot." And he's like, "Yo, shut up. I'm trying to think." And then she says, "Wait, how come there's no blood?" And then that's when he starts getting up and he's like, "Because I'm not bleeding." So he said, "I said you would only hurt yourself and your friends. What you didn't hear, you're going to feel." So they start trying to run away from him, but that's when he flies towards them, like grabs all of them in his grip, and then he flies them, I guess, to a different room. He says, "Obviously, you all have done something you shouldn't have done, period. And you really should not have done it to me, because I very much value my privacy. So let's make a deal. If you never attempt crime again and never tell anyone what you've seen here today, I will let you go." So then all of a sudden he realizes like, oh, he still has a gun. So he uses his powers again to like telekinetically like bring it to him, and then he tells them, "So can you keep your mouth shut, or will I have to hunt you down?" Because he already told them like, "If you don't keep this secret, I will find out." And they're like, "No, sir, my lips are sealed. I ain't seen nothing." So he asks her, "What about you, young lady? How did you get mixed up in this?" And she's like, "I have no idea." So he says, "You need to figure it out. Fix your life." And then we see where she goes back home and everything. She goes back and sees her mom. And I think her mom is like a nurse or something. I can't remember. But anyway, she's saying like, "Oh, there you are," and everything. She's like, "I was wondering where you were." And then she just tells her mom like, "Sorry, I'm tired. I'm gonna go lay down." And then we see where she didn't eat dinner, and her mom's telling her like, "I'm gonna put the food away. Are you sure you're still not hungry?" She's like, "No, I'm good." So her mom is of course worried about her. But then we see where it goes to the next day, and like the guys are trying to like get her to come and like hang out with them. And the guy that's basically supposed to be her boyfriend is saying like, "Yeah, she's still like in shock or whatever. She needs some time." And says, "She ain't the only one. I'm scared too." But then we see where basically she really isn't in shock. She's not that scared because she goes back to his house and she's telling him like, "May I come in? I spent all night thinking about yesterday. I was thinking about how stupid it is that I go out with Ant. I know I'm better than him, but I'm so tired of being lonely, and the nice boys are too scared to ask me out. And why not be popular? So I end up doing something that my mother would beat the black off me for doing, which ends up being a good thing because I meet you." And when she said that, she reminded me so much of my friend Erin. Like that sounded like some shit that she would probably say. But anyway, she says, "What are you? A black man who's rich, educated? I'm guessing you've read most of these books, and you've got superpowers? Are you kidding me?" So he asked like, "What do you think I am?" And she says, "I think you're the answer. I think you've got the resources to help a lot of people. And you sit here in your little castle because you think it's not worth the effort." So he's trying to tell her like, "You don't know who I am, what I do, or what I've done, but you've come to that judgment." She's like, "Well, you judged us yesterday." So she says, "I'm more than that, but I need your help." So he asks her, "What is it you want?" And that's where she finally tells him like, "Look, I want you to be a superhero and I want to be your sidekick." And he's like, "Oh, what?" So that's where she finally tells him, like, "Well, there are heroes like my mom or firefighters who save kids from burning buildings, but you can be a superhero, a person who fixes impossible problems and inspires everyone to do better because you're doing it." So he just straight up tells her, "No." She's like, "What? No. No to your no." He's like, "You realize you can't make me do anything, obviously." She's like, "Yeah, but I can convince you." He says, "You haven't thought this through. If I do impossible things, how do I inspire people? Don't they end up taking what I do for granted and complain about what I don't do?" To which she says, "That's why you need me. I keeps it real. When they see me doing things and they know I'm not super like you, then they know they can do stuff too." So, I mean, for comic book logic, for superhero logic, pretty sound. And then he says, "Do you know how ridiculous that sounds?" She's like, "No." "Okay, let me ask you a question. When you see those D boys selling drugs on Martin Luther King Avenue, doesn't that make you sick?" And he asks her, like, "Well, what do you mean?" And so she goes on to explain to him, like, Martin Luther King lived his whole life so that guys like that wouldn't have to exist, but yet they're out there basically pissing on his memory by selling drugs on a corner dedicated to his memory. And she says, "You could do something about it. You could get rid of them like that." And he says, "I could get rid of them like that, but the next day the boys I eliminated will be replaced." So she's like, "So get rid of them too." He's like, "The economic imperative will ensure there's always someone there selling drugs as an escape from poverty and despair." She's like, "Well, can't we at least try it?" And that gives us this flashback where apparently he knew a woman who was once like the love of his life, who looked exactly like her, who also got him to kind of like help out back in what, Paris 1921. He says, "We can do anything we want, dearest. Sitting here with you on the left bank on a perfect spring day is an experience I wouldn't trade for anything." And she tells him, "Nor would I, Augustus, but we've seen too much suffering to not take advantage of our unique opportunity to administer justice. How long do you think you can keep your light, yeah, under a barrel? You are not going to stop." Or where he's asking her, "You are not going to stop, are you?" She says, "Of course not." So he's like, "Well, once again, you've talked me into another well-intentioned but pointless crusade. Fine then, I'll do it." So she's like, that's where we come back to present day. She's like, "Really, you will?" Like, awesome. So she says, "I'm Raquel Irvin. What's your name?" He says, "Augustus Freeman." Good way to start over, Raquel. So that's where we end this first issue in She Ready. And that's not just me. That's the name of this first issue, She Ready. So sure enough, I mean, that's pretty much what we see here. She's ready to become a hero. We didn't really get to see him actually in this whole superhero like thing, but this was supposed to be like the establishing issue, and we did get to see him use his powers. So at the very least, we got to see him doing something awesome, which if you've ever seen a Your Boy Zach video, especially like his older ones, like that's the criteria. We should see you doing at least one awesome thing in your own book. And we saw that where he basically was using his powers to like intimidate them. Then he used like the telekinesis to destroy the gun, like, and then he used his super strength to destroy the gun too. Like all of that together showed him doing something. So we didn't have to see him in the costume just yet for us to still like get something out of this. And that's why I'm saying like that was a good first issue. And I think I saw in an interview with the writer that he said in the second issue is where we finally see him in the actual costume. So I'm ready to see that. And I mean, that's where I'm saying like a character like this is someone who people like me have been wanting to see for a while. I mean, you'd be surprised, right? You would think it'd be more black people who are wanting to see a character like this, but I've been wanting to see Icon used more often since I saw him in Young Justice. Like I was hyped. I was hyped as a motherfucker when the first time I saw him in Young Justice. I was like, "Yo, they put Icon in the show. Like finally a character like that gets a little bit of like recognition outside of the comics for people who might not even know who he is." And so now that they're actually giving him a series with Rocket, I'm happy to see it. I really am. I'm not even gonna lie. So this was a good first issue. I like where it's going, and I hope to see it continue along this track. And I hope that that more people pick up this particular series, because like the whole thing is that like everybody is talking about the Static series, and I understand it because like I said, we all grew up with the Static Shock cartoon show, and we all came to appreciate the character for that because the show was amazing. But the thing is, like, Icon and Rocket, and especially just like when it's done well like this in a comic book form, it's something that should be appreciated as well. And that's how I felt about it for a long way. So I'm glad that they've finally been given an actual series. It's not just a digital only type of thing. I know it probably was like digital first, or well, nowadays they put out everything digital first and then it comes out on print, which is kind of annoying for people like me who do the reviews, because like people have already read like the next issue when I'm reading the issue that just came out in print. But whatever, that's kind of what we deal with in the modern age that we're in. So I will continue to deal with it. But I mean, at the very least, you get to hear someone else's like take on this type of stuff, and you get to see it just kind of like presented, someone talking about it. So I mean, there's that, and I want to see this character succeed. I really do, because I've always liked the character of Icon. Like I think he's a really cool thing. Yes, like I said, he sounds very much like Superman, but he's completely original in his own way. He came to Earth in a different time. He has his own power set. He has his own costume. He has his own identity. Like everything is original for him. So I'm willing to read more of him if other people are willing to read him too. Maybe this series can get an ongoing series. That's how these things work. But hopefully, we'll see if people will pick it up and start talking about it and start talking about, let's get an Icon movie or an Icon whatever animated series, something, instead of just always talking about, hey, can we get a black Superman? You already have him. He's right here. And he's been waiting for y'all to like give him some actual attention. So are you going to do it or not? It's a challenge to everybody who's been saying they want more diversity in comics. Let's see if you're going to support it. Make this a thing. I'd love to see it. Make it a thing. So anyway, yeah, if you've picked this up, then definitely feel free to let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like the video, subscribe, and make sure you are still subscribed. Go and check out my Substack if you're feeling like just daring. You feel like you want to read some comic book reviews instead of hearing me talk about them. But anyway, guys, if you're done here, then go and read a book, especially that one. Make sure you pick that one up. But anyway, if not, then I will see you on my next video.